In many courtrooms throughout the South, there were actually white Bibles and a black Bible to swear to tell the truth on.
Because?
Because there was this desire to keep the races so separate that they could not touch the same Bible.
They wouldn't touch the same Bible. You have a lot of examples of great African Americans who would not have had the opportunity to excel, or may not have had if they had stayed in the South, which brings us to the man sitting beside you, Bill Russell. Bill, let's go to the book's question, the question Isabel asks in the book. What might have happened to Bill Russell had his parents not migrated?
Well, I'll just start this way. My grandfather never spent a day in school. There was no school. When my father was born, he realized there was no school for the black kids. So he went to got some other guys, and they got their savings or whatever together, and went to the lumber yard to buy lumber to build a school, so that when his son became 6, there'd be a school for him to go to. Well, when they went and bought the lumber, paid for it, and went to get their wagons to bring the wood to where they're going to build a school. Well, in the meantime, the guy at the shop there at the wood place found out what they were going to do with it. So when they came back, he says, "I'm not going to sell you the lumber." My grandpa said, "Well, okay, then give me my money back." He said, "No, there's no agreement that a white man is bound to honor with a black person. So I'm going to keep the lumber and the money." And my grandfather, his own way, said, "Well, there's a third option you hadn't considered. I would like to bring it to your attention. If you don't give me the lumber and don't give me the money, I will kill you." So he thought about it, and he decided they could have the lumber.
But now, Isabel, that's the kind of encounter that it was not easy for the black man to survive, a moment like that in the South.
I'll go to a couple of things chronologically in my family. My grandfather never spent a day in school. My father dropped out of 6th grade. I did 4 years of college. And my daughter graduated from Harvard Law School. That's the evolution of my family in terms of education. But my father was a big, strong, high-spirited person. And one of the reasons he had to leave was, he says, "If I stay here, there'll be no one to take care of my family, because I'll either kill one of them or they'll kill me. And so it's best that I leave."
You would have grown up an orphan in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Do you remember the trip? Do you remember going from Monroe to Oakland?
It was the greatest adventure that a 9-year-old could ever experience. My father had an encounter with his boss, and he decided to leave over a pay raise. And he told my father he couldn't give him a pay raise because he couldn't pay one of the N-words as much as he paid the white boys. So my father decided to leave. He said, "Well, I'll give you the money." And this man died thinking it was about the money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about him using the N-word to my father to his face, and like, "Oh, that's a matter of course."
What do you think would have happened if you had stayed? If your father, let's say something bad did happen to your father and you were left in Louisiana without a father?
In that culture, we'll call it, that was not unusual for black men to disappear. And what would happen is the wife and the relatives would raise the kid. That's where that thing comes, like that phrase, "It takes a village to raise a child." And so when my mother died, in fact, her sisters debated who would take my brother and who would take me. And we would move back to Louisiana. And my father said, I can't do that because I promised their mother that I would send them to college. And so he took us back to California. But it was to me, it was just a great adventure. You know, you get on a locomotive, a train with a locomotive to St. Louis, to St. Louis, and then we took a streamliner from St. Louis to Denver. I think it's called American Eagle, and there was white and colored signs all the way to St. Louis. But the Eagle, there were no signs. And so they changed on their trip.
How fitting there was an eagle.
Oh, yes.
Isabel, there's a quote deep into the book, and it's fascinating how you use the language of our culture as we move through this history. We go from talking about colored in this book to talking about Negroes to talking about black to African American, and Daniel Patrick Moynihan has a quote, having studied the Negro family as he did at that time, where in your book, where he says that the Negro American has survived at all is extraordinary. A lesser people might simply have died out, as indeed others have. I don't think without this book that white America would realize that that's how bad this was, that's how close we came, that's how much was at stake in this migration.
At the same time, I am so inspired by the fact that he is the living embodiment of the hopes and dreams and the heart's desire of his parents and of the 6 million other people who did what his parents did, which means that they had the opportunity for their children to get what they had not gotten. One reason why the story has often not been told in this way is because the people didn't talk about it. There's this desire now for the younger generation to understand what happened before. The majority of African Americans who you might meet in the North and West are descended from this great migration, and many people such as himself.
Bill Russell, give us the last word on this.
Well, we never considered a migration. That's a modern term. We considered it immigration because we left one country to go to another country, completely different culture, not knowing what to expect. And one of the things, like most immigrants, there were people there waiting to tell us, show us the ropes, so to speak. You know, and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable as far as they could ascertain. You see, because if you come from a totally segregated society, how do you react when you're in an integrated society? You know, that when I started 4th grade, I started in an integrated school. And I'm sitting in a class with these white kids, and that was a completely foreign situation to me. Because my mother, in particular, always kept white people away from me. She would always keep me away from them, because she said she didn't know what they would do.
Too dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah. We could go on and on. I really wish we had more time for this. Isabel Wilkerson, the book is The Warmth of Other Suns. And the great Bill Russell, thank you very much, both of you, for joining me here tonight.